tuning into the Netflix and Kill podcast. This episode is on Dustin, the new co-host, also a co-host or the main host of the Heavy Metal History podcast. And anything else in terms of introduction we should know about you, Dustin?
I mean, as far as like the stuff I primarily do, I guess that's about it. I mean, I just do that podcast. Yeah.
Awesome. And then and if anyone, I would recommend people check it out. He's interviewed like people from Carnifex, I Declare War, like these awesome heavy bands. So I'm excited. But
yeah, Carnifex is who I toured with for about 5 years. So that was kind of how I got to meet a lot of these people.
Nice. Yeah, I saw them in Dallas, like on their last. Oh no, it was what's that death metal festival? Never mind. I'm getting off topic here. But, yeah, I saw one a little like music festival there. But okay, so first question here is, how do you define horror? What criteria must be met for you to consider a film horror?
I think I'm a little bit in the old school category of that. I typically think of like slasher movies when I think of horror. You know, obviously people have to be killed in all these like brutal ways by some menacing serial killer, and I feel like that is a horror movie, like a classic definition of a horror movie. Now the scope is much broader. You know, you have like body horror and what do you call it, like mental horror, psychological, yeah, all kinds of different genres now. But I think just because I grew up in like the early 90s, that's kind of typically what I think of when I hear horror.
When did you start watching horror films?
So, oh man, I was actually kind of a pussy when I was growing up when it came to horror films. I had three cousins that tortured me to no end with the Child's Play movies. I was terrified of them growing up. So I would never, I mean, I was like probably like 6, 7 during this time, and I would never ever watch them. But the first one that I remember seeing when I was a little kid was Pet Sematary. And that movie freaked me out to no end. Just that opening sequence when you have the guy with his fucking head split open and his brains and blood are all over and he's being rushed into the hospital, and that's never scarred me more than that scene. And I remember my dad owning the VHS of it, and we had to hide it in the closet because I was scared of the cover, because it had him on the cover with his head split open, and it was the most terrifying thing to me. And then that kind of led into my cousins terrorizing me with Child's Play movies. And I don't know what happened one day in like 3rd, 4th grade. I just stopped being scared of scary movies. I saw a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Not one that typically people would say is their first one, but I saw Nightmare on Elm Street 5 first. Kind of a weird one to get into. And from there, man, I borrowed or rented every horror movie I possibly could from anybody. I mean, I was obsessed with Halloween when I was in probably like 5th or 6th grade. The Friday the 13th movies. When I was in high school, I was fucking obsessed with Evil Dead. Still am. I think it's by far one of my favorite movies. I used to live like an hour away from where they shot the first one, up in Morristown, Tennessee. I'm actually going to be moving back to that area, so that'll be interesting. So yeah, all those kind of movies have like a little soft spot in my heart, even if they're not technically like my favorites.
Nice. Yeah, and so younger wise, when you were getting into that like 5th grade, whatnot, like was it just that sensation of like getting scared, or were you just interested by the special effects? Like what was the kind of...
I think it was just being scared. It didn't hit me about the special effects until later on when I was like kind of in high school. That's when I really started getting into like different movies because of the special effects. Um, I think it was just being scared, because I spent so much time being terrified by my cousins with like these movies. Eventually, I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna be scared, I'm gonna do it on my own terms, and watch these scary ass movies. Oh, another one that I remember fucking terrified me that my cousins made me watch was Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. Holy fuck. Those demons were probably the scariest things I had ever seen. And like, I remember watching it, like being absolutely terrified. I hated it, but at the same time, like I could not watch it because it was so scary. It was just like I was locked into it. And I mean, even the effects in that movie are great. Like when Billy Zane punches through that cop's head. I remember that freaking me out so bad. And um, yeah, I don't know how this switch kind of got flicked to where I wasn't necessarily scared anymore, but I think that was another one that kind of like really got to me when I was younger, thanks to my cousins. I guess I can blame them for all my fucking horror movies.
Yeah, and I have an interesting story because I had a cousin that would like, dude. I remember him having like trauma, just getting freaked out by the Chucky doll, not
Oh
necessarily
yeah.
Child's Play, but like I remember a certain relative of mine had like that doll in their basement, and like I remember one, I think we're all over their house, and like they went down they all went down the basement. And they did that intentionally, just scare my cousin, and dude, he fucking ran the fuck up because the doll
Yeah.
like had like some type of moving type of or like talked or whatever. It was
Yeah, my cousins had a doll that was it wasn't the Child's Play doll specifically, but it was really close, and they would literally throw me in the closet with the doll and hold the door shut and just leave me in there with the fucking doll, like terrifying, and be like, "Chucky's gonna get you." And I'm like, "What?" Like, "No, let me out." Like they would terrorize me.
assholes. All right. So yeah. So now currently, what's the kind of the reason? Is it sort of the same, or has there anything been added to it? Nostalgia.
Nowadays, yeah, I think part of it's nostalgia. Like I will literally, pick a day that I'm not doing anything, or like I want to work on like some podcast stuff or like some graphic design stuff or comic book stuff, and I'll throw on all the Nightmare on Elm Streets and just have them on in the background, while I'm working on other stuff. It kind of calms me down. I know that's a weird thing to say, but watching horror movies like really just chills me the fuck out. Like I don't get scared anymore. I'm like, cool. This is like death and mayhem and blood and guts, and I don't particularly enjoy watching it on like uh, I don't know, as a human, like like that stuff's fucked up. Like I can differentiate that part of it, so I don't enjoy it for that reason. But there's
Yeah.
something about it that just, I don't know, man, just chills me the fuck out. Like I like watching people being scared. Maybe it's because like the rest of my life is so stressful that something that's a little bit less stressful but also still stressful kind of like chills me out a little bit. I don't know. There's got to be some reason, but I don't know exactly what it is. But I think now it's just like a nostalgia and calm factor to it. That's why I watch them.
I'm on the same boat, dude. It's definitely like I hope I don't know if where it's the same things like to where like I feel more appreciative of living when I'm
Yeah.
watching like people get fucking wrecked. So it's like, oh, okay, I can be more appreciative just to love my life. Anyways, sort of like listening to heavy music too, which is kind of the same boat.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the other thing is the two go hand in hand so well, because that's the other thing is like listening to heavy metal calms me the fuck down. Like if I've had a bad day and I want to go, blast some I Declare War, I'm gonna feel a lot better in 30 minutes than I did, you know, 30 minutes before listening to it.
All right, cool. All right, and then in terms of your preferred horror subgenres, yeah, just kind of list some and why.
Man, I'm all over the place now because there's not a horror movie I won't watch. In fact, I'm to the point where I've seen everything so much. It's just like it's been a minute since I've seen a movie that like really captured me or that I didn't know about, because I feel like I've seen pretty much everything, which is kind of what was nice about what we were talking about when I found Street Trash pretty recently. I was kind of appalled at myself that I'd never seen this movie, and it came out in like the late '80s, uh, even early '90s, and I was just like, how did I never know about this movie? And um, it's just one of those so bad it's good movies, and I yeah, I watched that pretty recently. I watched Poltergeist again recently. I watched that a lot growing up. Poltergeist is a great movie. It's scary, but on a way that is kind of lighthearted, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was always, for whatever reason, a movie that never scared me when I was little, but I always enjoyed it. So I don't know, man. Like I kind of love a little bit of everything. You know, I like the classic slasher movies. I like the really fucked up, worst kind of torture porn movie. You know, a Serbian film being like the number one that everybody talks about. I've seen that movie so many times, and like, yeah, it's fucked up, but like, I don't know. At the end of the day, like it's a movie to me. Like I can distance myself from it being real versus a movie, and I know that it's just a fucking movie. So I'm not as like freaked out or grossed out by it. I know it's not necessarily a horror movie, but Enter the Void deals with a lot of really heavy, scary themes that horror movies do as well. Which is like death and dying, and I kind of consider it a horror movie because it's very dark. And you talk about tone. That's a movie that is really dark in tone, just with the subject matter in itself. And I think it could be technically a horror movie, even though there's no gore or supernatural element to it, really. But yeah, slashers, body horror. I love The Fly, Cronenberg.
Nice.
Man, I'm trying to think. I love Adam Green and Joe Lynch, like all their stuff, like Hatchet and Spiral and Mayhem, which just came out really recently. And I know I know that Joe likes to shit on it, but I thought Knights of Bad Aston was pretty good. I dug that movie, even though it was a train wreck from what he always talks about, which is unfortunate, but I get it.
What's that dude? The guy that's on Game of Thrones.
Oh fuck! I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, so I know his name though. Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, Peter Dinklage taking a bong hit.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah, that movie's great.
All right. Okay, so what are your thoughts on? I mean, do you collect physical media at all in terms of like movies? I don't know if you've heard of like the Severin, like those type of distribution companies, or.
Yeah, not as much as I used to. Just because a lot of I think everything's so easily available digitally that I don't really see a need for like a physical movie nowadays. If it's something I really, really like and really, really want to support, I'll buy it. I know when Digging Up the Marrow came out, Adam was like, please go fucking buy this. It's important. And I went out and I bought it. And then I bought another copy to give to a friend because I was like, yo, you got to see this fucking movie. And I really appreciate what he does as a director, and not only that, but like him as a person, just from like listening to his podcasts and stuff. So I really enjoy supporting him and his work. So it was important to me to kind of buy that movie. With Mayhem, it was pretty easily available on digital platforms, so I didn't really see a need to go buy it because it was already on Shudder when I was ready to watch it, or it was on Amazon, even a little bit before that. I think it was only like $3 to watch it, So, I don't really collect movies. I'm more of like a vinyl records kind of dude. I'm more into like music. That's probably like the only thing I really spend money on. But even then, I kind of slow down on vinyl records as well.
All right, nice. In terms of, and then you kind of went to like what helped cultivate your interest was sort of your relatives fucking with you.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're currently in the West Coast, correct? But
Yeah,
you've lived in California. You said you lived in California, right? For
yeah. I lived in Southern California for a while when I was touring. Then I moved up to the North Bay. I was living in Santa Rosa for like 5 years. And then I made the unfortunate decision to move up to Washington, and that has not worked out well. So now I'm moving back to Tennessee.
all right. Well, I mean, in terms of like the Halloween festivities in that West Coast,
Ah,
I mean, did you do a lot when you were in California? I mean, in terms of, I guess that's more in the L.A., right? They have that whole kind
yeah.
of, yeah. Okay.
It was cool though. Where I was living in Santa Rosa, there was this cult movie night that they had every Thursday, I think every other week, and they would show old horror movies or like old 80s like classic sci-fi. I got to see RoboCop on the fucking big screen. That was like one of my dreams for as long
Nice.
as I've been alive. And they would also have guests from the movies. I got to meet Barbara Crampton. They like right before I left Santa Rosa, they did a film festival, and I got to meet Robert Englund and Nancy, girl who played Nancy. I'm blanking on her name. Heather Langenkamp. I got to meet her, and we got to watch, the original Nightmare along with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and it was a cool film festival. This guy Neil, he's very passionate about horror, and he was like trying to really cultivate this North Bay kind of movie horror scene, and I was really trying to get involved with that before I left, and um, I moved, and nothing really ever came of it. So, but it was nice to have, because every other Thursday or Wednesday, I forget which day it was, I would go watch 2 horror films for $10 in a nice movie theater and have a fucking good time, and like get to talk with people who are also into that stuff. As far as like stuff to do on Halloween, I mean, it's just parties.
Right.
Yeah, I up until about 2 or 3 years ago, I wasn't even like a horror related costume, and then when they announced that the Evil Dead TV show is getting made, I was like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to be for Halloween every year now. So I spent about 2 months making a screen accurate chainsaw arm for myself. And now every year I dress up as Ash from Evil Dead. And luckily every year more and more people know who I am. And it's fucking awesome that people finally like recognize the greatness that is Evil Dead.
That's so sick. All right. In terms of the preferred aesthetics when it comes to horror films, I'm assuming you prefer the practical over the CGI.
Absolutely.
All
Every
right.
time. Yeah, dude, I've seen so many bad like CG blood kind of movies, and it just takes me out of it immediately, and I'm like, oh man, like would it really have been that much harder to do like a practical blood effect? And yeah, sure, some of it is not the greatest like practical stuff if you're watching like really old movies, like when they were just figuring out how to do this shit. But there's something about that is it's still so genuine, more than seeing like a computer animated blood spurt or having a limb chopped off. It's very recognizable. Whereas like, yeah, okay, if some silicone comes up or whatever and the blood, prosthetic piece kind of doesn't look blended in well enough, like sure, you notice it, but I'll take that any day over a shitty CGI like anything.
And then I'm assuming color over monochrome, correct? Or
It depends on what the use is for. I think if you're doing it in tandem, like I think an overall like black and white movie is less interesting to me because I am a visual person. But I've seen movies where it's been done well enough that it doesn't hinder like what's going on in the movie, And I mean, obviously, like Night of the Living Dead is a perfect example of that. Like you don't need color for that movie to be good. But just as well, on like the flip side of the coin there, when they did the remake in 1990, I think that remake is fucking brilliant and it looks amazing, and still captures like the true essence of what that movie originally was, but it's in color now. And you can see all those cool effects with a little bit more vivid kind of tones to it. And I think that's probably Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's probably I'm okay with either one, you know.
All right. In terms of the sound, do you prefer like more synth over like classical, or is it?
Yeah, I'm a big synth guy. I think the Stranger Things soundtracks probably like those guys. They actually have a band on their own called Survive, and it's probably some of my favorite soundtrack stuff. The same thing with Disaster Piece, who did the It Follows soundtrack. I love that soundtrack. I think a guy that gets a little bit too much credit for his soundtracks that I think are garbage is Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I can't stand his soundtracks at all. But that's just me. That's my opinion.
Do you have a bit of a dislike of Trent Reznor, or
No,
just that
actually,
was okay?
I enjoy Nine Inch Nails. I think Trent Reznor is like a cool dude, but I just don't like the music he makes for movies. It's very I think whatever like notes or tones he's using, they're very grating to me. The movie that I noticed it the most on every time is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I fucking hate that soundtrack because it's so ear piercing. It distracts me from the movie, and I'm just like, yo, this movie would be better with no soundtrack, to be honest.
Love
But
it.
yeah, it's nothing against Trent or like anything that I don't find his music scores to be very good.
Yeah, and I think he's doing the new Halloween, right? Isn't he?
I don't. No, I don't think so. Because I was
Was it?
listening to a podcast with John Carpenter, and he said he was going to be
Oh,
doing it.
oh shit. Yeah, that's. I guess. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he's pretty heavily involved with the remake, so or sequel, whatever you want to look at it as.
Reboot.
Yeah, yeah.
Or no, you're right. No, it is a sequel. Yeah, forgot. Okay, cool. In terms of tropes, is there any that you're jaded by, like jump scares or?
Don't get me started on jump scares. They're lazy. They are not scary. That doesn't make a scary movie. That's not a fucking scary movie to me. I think the biggest perpetrator of this is the Paranormal Activity series, or uh, um, like Annabelle and all those kind of Blumhouse. Blumhouse is the those like actually I will say this: the first couple Paranormal Activity movies did have some genuinely like tense and freaking weird, scary kind of parts. But when it devolves to the point where they're doing a loud noise just to get you to jump, that's not scary. You're playing on a base human like reaction that nobody can avoid, and it's lazy to me. If that's how you got to get a scare, um, gosh, what was a movie I saw fairly recently that was just like nothing but jump scares? I think it was a few years ago. The Lazarus Effect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that movie was bad, man. It was nothing but jump scares and loud noises, and I think The Conjuring 2 kind of devolved into that a little bit as well. And the last Insidious movie definitely went full on like nothing but jump scare. Like anything that the first two Insidious movies had going for it that genuinely made those movies like really creepy and scary, it's all gone in that last sequel. It's just nothing but jump scares. And I was like, fuck, man, like what happened here? So yeah, I really hate the jump scare trope. I also hate the oh, my phone's not getting any cell service out here. Come on. It's 2018. You get cell service everywhere. Like, don't even try to put that in a movie in a modern day setting.
All right. And in terms of, I guess the production companies or distribution companies, are there any that you're a fan of, or into video games too? I don't know, if like SpectreVision or I don't know. I guess maybe early Blumhouse, but yeah, I don't know. What is there
Yeah,
any?
that's the thing is like Blumhouse started off with like some genuinely like good ideas and good movies, but I think they kind of they went a little bit too much into like the generic like jump scare route, which is unfortunate. I can't think of any like
Ariscope? Is that what it is? The
yeah,
Joe, right?
Adam. I mean, Adams. He puts all his own movies out on that, so that's I definitely look for anything that he does, even with like his little short films and everything. So I definitely love Ariscope. It's not necessarily a horror movie company, but A24 has put out some just nothing but stellar movies over the past like 5 years, if not longer. Pretty
Nice.
much everything that I've seen from them has been phenomenal. Uh, I think the only thing that I was a little bit disappointed by, and it was actually a horror, I guess it was a horror movie. It was called It Comes at Night, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it comes at night. Yeah.
yeah, I did. I left that movie kind of feeling it was definitely a little bit scary in parts, but the ending left me feeling really, really unresolved. And I was like, huh, okay, I guess this one a little bit of a stinker, but pretty much everything else. I mean, they put out Get Out. That's technically a horror movie, a horror comedy slash thriller. I don't know. That movie is so tonally all over the place. It's kind of an amalgamation, really.
All right.
But I can't really think of any one studio where I kind of look um, for like everything they do besides A24, and it's not really like a horror centric company.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And in terms of podcasts, you mentioned, or yeah, just kind of any genre or film centric podcasts that you listen to.
Yeah, I listen to so many podcasts. As far as like movie and horror ones, I listen to Adam Green's podcast. Him and Joe do a podcast called The Movie Crypt. If you guys have never listened to this podcast and you're a horror movie fan, you're definitely doing yourself a disservice and you're missing out. They actually answered a question of mine on their like holiday special they did this year. I wrote into
Oh,
yeah, I had the downer kind of letter that that I had to send in. But they answered it, and it was nice enough to kind of like help out a little bit. So that one's good. I listened to Mick Garris's podcast. What is it called? I forget. Let me look it up. I got it right here. If you guys don't know who Mick Garris is, like he's kind of like a under. I guess you could call him like an underground director, but he has literally been involved with so many movies behind the scenes that it's just kind of ridiculous. More people don't know about him. He got his start just doing like PA work on Star Wars and just kind of like meeting all these people through that, and eventually just started directing horror movies because he made friends with like Steven Spielberg and like all these big name people. It's called Postmortem with Mick Garris. It's really cool. He's had on like John Carpenter, Mike Doherty, Oren Peli, like Robert Shea, who is pivotal in getting the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff out there. So he's got some good stuff. A friend of mine and also a guest on my podcast that I've had, his name's Mike Hill. He's in the band Tombs. He does a horror movie podcast with a friend of his also named Mike. It's called the Necromaniacs Podcast. It's kind of like your standard, like, hey, we watch a movie and then we kind of talk about it and then give it a rating kind of podcast, but it's pretty cool. I like listening to Mike and his opinions, so I'm kind of into all his other podcasts that he does about various things as well. Let's see, not really horror related, but Doug Loves Movies.
nice.
Love that one. Shockwaves. I don't listen to it as much. I kind of pick and choose their episodes because sometimes I'm just kind of like, eh. There's another one that I've been trying to get into that I haven't got around to. It's called Heavy Metal Horror Cast. It's obviously like two things that I'm into, so I have episodes downloaded. I've just been so busy that I haven't gotten around to listening to it, but I'm sure I'll like it. So a little shout out to that podcast, I guess. I mean that's it as far as like genre kind of podcasts. I'm really picky and selective with what I listen to, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, how long have you been listening to podcasts? Because for me, it was like, I think
Oh,
like
man.
back in 2007, I think. I
Yeah.
don't know. It was like whenever Clerks 2 came out, because I know I started off with like the Smodcast and then went to like Doug Loves Movies and that.
Yeah, I started getting into them because of touring. It was like, I'm sitting there listening to heavy metal music all night. The last thing I want to do is get out of a venue, go on like a 6-hour car van ride to another town and listen to more heavy metal music, like I needed something to like chill out to, and I found out about Joe Rogan doing a podcast.
Nice.
And so yeah, I started listening to Rogan's podcast in like 2008, and then got into like Douglas movies. I've been really on and off with Nerdist podcast. I think it's called something else now because he had to rename it. Yeah. I'm not like a huge fan of Chris Hardwick's. I'm like indifferent towards him, but sometimes he has some really cool guests. So I would just like pick and choose which ones I want to listen to that I think would be interesting. So yeah, 2008, I guess. So about 10 years I've been listening to podcasts now. So that's a long time.
Nice, man. All right. And what did I want to get at was in terms of I guess like if you were able to like to curate like a like one-time festival, that would be kind of, I mean, like yeah, you know, I'm assuming RoboCop would be there, but like, you know,
yeah, I was gonna say number one, RoboCop for sure.
Yeah, some type of like film festival that was sort of like definitely showed your taste, like what you love about the genre. Like what films would they be? I could be, you know, 3 to 10. I don't know if you can try to.
So, yeah, you know, RoboCop isn't necessarily a horror film, but it's definitely got some really brutal, violent sci-fi stuff in it, and that would definitely be my number one. It's hard to go.
It can be genre like sci-fi, like you mentioned.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with that movie. I think a lot of people really underrate that movie, and it's criminal to me. But I get why. You know, think of the title alone, RoboCop. How interesting does that sound? But I think after that, I would have to pick Monster Squad. There's something about the combination of classic horror movie monsters mixed with the Goonies and just the overall vibe of that movie. I fucking love. You know, Shane Black is probably one of my favorite writers and directors, so pretty much anything that he does, like, I'm into it. And I think Monster Squad is one of those perfect combinations of horror per se. You know, it's kind of scary, I guess, but with a lightheartedness. It's like a lighthearted, scary movie. And you know, not only that whole movie is like an homage to the classic horror movies. You know, vampires, Frankenstein, werewolves. I fucking love werewolves. So, you know, the next one after that would have to be American Werewolf in London.
Classic.
Yeah, I mean, I fucking love werewolves. They made an Oscar because the effects in that movie were so groundbreaking at the time. And it not only that, it's just it's even kind of a funny movie. Like the little back and forths when his buddy dies and then he's haunted by him, and you see him slowly decompose over the course of the movie, but he's still cracking all these like little fucking jokes and like messing with his friend. And yeah, I love that movie. That's another pick. Can't go wrong with that one. I think let me think. This is kind of hard because like I know the first few, but I know there's other ones.
Yeah, I'll edit it. So yeah.
Okay.
Definitely take your time.
Let's see here. This might be a weird one, but Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The kind of direct sequel to the first one, ignoring the fact that the second one, not that the second one's really that bad, because there are some like really terrifying and good parts in the second one, but I think the third one is like an actual sequel in terms of like where the first one left off. And I think that cast is so great. You know, Patricia Arquette, like everybody in that movie. Lawrence Fishburne's in that movie, like and it's really scary, man. Like it's right before Freddy gets a little bit too campy and like jokey, but it's starting to get there. You know, the Welcome to Primetime bitches in that movie. But that one, for some reason, to me, is like the scariest out of all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I think it's just the fact that he's preying on these poor kids who have some of them have like mental illnesses or drug addictions, and maybe I don't know if Wes did this on purpose or the subtext of all these kids dealing with these other issues while being hunted down in their dreams, where they're supposed to have all these great powers and feel empowered, and they get hunted down one by one by this fucking piece of shit Freddy. It's something really just scary about it, because it's kind of like saying like, oh yeah, these things that these kids are struggling with, in the end, they lose out to it. If you look at it that way, it's like Freddy being the addiction, the embodiment of the addiction or whatever that they're dealing with, whether it's like trauma or whatever. I feel like Freddy's like the embodiment of that in that movie, and it's really scary to me if you look at it that way. So yeah, part 3 I would put in there. Oh man, another movie a lot of people don't really know about that I think is fucking great. It's another one from the 80s. It's called Waxwork. Have you ever seen this one?
No, I have not.
So it's got Zach Galligan in it from Gremlins, and it's about this group of kids that go into this wax museum, but the wax displays are like these other dimensions where like if they because they start fucking around and they go into the displays, but when they do that, they're transported into this other dimension where like everything that's in the display is actually happening. So for instance, like this one kid goes into a scene where a werewolf is being killed, and the werewolf is killing, like it's a battle between a guy and a werewolf. And so the guy goes in and he's in this scenario now where the werewolf is real, and then he ends up getting killed by the werewolf, and the whole wax scene changes around what happened inside that other dimension of where like the kid got transported to, and he is now a part of the wax statuette. Oh. So each little like display is some little different like monster or scenario. Like there's zombies, and then there's the Marquis de Sade and torture and stuff like this. And yeah, it's a crazy ass movie. It's really cool. A little bit of an underrated gem. I would throw that in there for like obscurity purposes, probably, because I do feel it is a little bit obscure. Let's see here. What else? I feel like too, like I would have to obviously put Evil Dead, like the trilogy in there. Evil Dead 1, 2, and Army of Darkness. Yeah. I would have to put that as like a triple shot to kind of round it out there. Yeah.
All right. That's sick, dude. Okay, and let's get to, how do I say this? So some of the most memorable kills that you've seen in your, I guess, horror film viewing experience that you can kind of recall.
Well, one that I talked about earlier is that scene in Demon Knight where Billy Zane punches through this cop's head. I mean, that fucked me up so bad when I saw that. I was just like, because the gore looked so fucking real. And, at this point too, like, this was kind of like early days of the internet, but my cousins also fucked with me, like showing me stuff off like rotten.com, and like my cousins were horrible to me. I'm kind of realizing, cause they were all older than me. So like, they were like the older siblings that I never really had, but yeah, so like I kind of knew what like a dead body looked like, and when you saw that fist punch through that head, it looked like real gore and brains and guts. And the even more creepier part is when like his fist is stuck in the face, and he like puts his boot to like get the head off his fist, and it just makes that thud and gush, and it's just like good sound design in there. Fuck that one. Yeah, that one always sticks with me. It's a pretty fucked up kill. Hatchet, pretty much almost every kill in Hatchet is ridiculously memorable, but the one for sure is when he puts his hands in I forget the older lady's name, whatever her character's name was. There's an older lady that's married to Richard Reilly's character, and they're like this old touristy couple. And she gets caught, and Victor Crowley puts his hands in her mouth and just like completely rips her jaw and head apart. And holy fuck, dude! I remember the first time I saw that, I was watching it with my friend Kevin, and we were just like, "Holy fuck!" Like we were like, dude, we're in. This movie is the shit. Like it doesn't matter what happens after this. That was probably one of the coolest kills we had ever seen in a movie. And sure enough, like every kill after that, like this fucking sandblaster kill, like oh man, like Adam Green put some great kills in that movie. If for some reason, you know, you've never seen Hatchet, guys, like go watch it right now. Stop this. Go watch Hatchet. It's got great practical effects. It's got a great cast. Probably actually, oh my god. One, I won't say it's my favorite part of the movie, but the blonde girl in the movie that plays like the ditzy kind of like, there's like a Girls Gone Wild like subplot in the movie, and the blonde girl is the little girl from Addams Family, like the shitty kind of stuck up rich girl that antagonizes the Addams Family.
Okay.
That's her all grown up, and I had the hugest crush on that girl when I was younger, and she gets like pretty fucking naked in that movie, and I remember being like, holy shit, my dreams have just come true. Getting to see this girl naked, and you know, not necessarily a kill, but you know, nudity goes pretty hand in hand with horror movies if you think about it. So that was very memorable for me, and the Hatchet movie as well.
Yeah, was that the first one then? That
yeah.
The jaw or the head.
Yep,
Okay.
that was the first one. The new one has a pretty memorable kill too. That's for damn sure. I think me and you talked about this when we first kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's one of
Cell
my.
phone.
Yeah, I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but holy fuck! Like you're not gonna forget that for a while. Let's see what else. What else? Man, trying to think here. What's something else that kind of fucked me up? God, man, this is hard when you're like thinking about it.
On the spot, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Man, I don't know. Memorable. I think those are really the only ones that like stick out to me kind of offhand. Like I would have to really think about a little bit more and like look into some movies to kind of remember some other ones.
For sure.
But those few for sure are pretty fucked up and cool. Like the effects are good in all of them.
Nice. And when you watched Hatchet, was it like the year it came out? Because I remember I specifically went after because I remember there was a cameo with Robert Englund. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
shit. And then so I go see it, and that like again that blew my mind. I'm like, oh, this is because I think at that time I think Saw and stuff was like coming out, right? Yeah. So
Yeah,
I was definitely into that, but I was like that Hatchet thing was like, oh, this is refreshing.
Yeah, you know, the only reason I found out about that movie is it had been kind of making the rounds that it had been pirated a whole lot, and like I remember reading a bunch of interviews with Adam Green about it, and yeah, I was like, oh man, this movie must be like really cool if it's being pirated that much, you know? So I remember just like either later that night or like a couple days later, I remember being in a Walmart and seeing it on sale for like $10, and I was like, yo, Kevin, do you want to get this movie? It's that one we were reading about the other day. He's like, yeah, fuck it, why not? So we each threw in like $5 and bought it on DVD, and then went home and watched it and proceeded to like freak out at how fucking cool it was. And then, you know, every time a friend would come over, it would be like, yo, you got to watch this movie with us like right now. I swear, like probably within the first like couple weeks of having that movie, we watched it like 15 times probably.
All right, nice. All right, yeah, let me get into because I want to definitely get into some directors, but
Yeah.
Have you ever had any supernatural event? Like, I don't know if you ever mess with Ouija boards, or if you know anyone that you respect kind of mentioned that they've had any weird surreal experiences with Ouija boards, or like, maybe some other supernatural type of quote unquote supernatural event, or is that something you completely don't even kind of
Um,
react to?
hmm. Me personally, not really. I don't. I don't really. I don't know. I like some stuff I see and I'm like, oh wow, like yeah, that's pretty crazy and like creepy and weird that that happened. Um, but I'm a very like analytical and like science based person, so like if there's no factual evidence to kind of back it up, I'm like, this could be like nothing. It could just be like a trick of a mind or video editing or who knows. Um, so I don't really like super believe in it, but I have had like friends have things happen to them, and like I've had a couple like weird instances myself of things that I legit like cannot explain.
Go
Uh,
ahead, go if you can
well,
discuss one of them. It's like a ghost type of thing,
so
or
I don't know. Like so basically what happened was this is when I was still living with my dad, and I'm a notorious like night owl. I'm always up until like 3, 4 in the morning, especially when I was younger, maybe not so much anymore because of, working and everything. But I remember being up super fucking late, like 3, 4 in the morning. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. So I get in my bed and I lay down and I, put my head on the pillow. And the next thing I know, I just felt like this force fucking hit my pillow in my bed right next to my face. And I was like I got up and I was like, what? Like I thought something fell on me, but there was nothing around me to fall on me. Like my bed was away from my desk or anything like that. It literally felt like something punched my pillow in the bed. And I was just like, what the fuck just happened? Like I was freaked the fuck out. But like our house isn't like it wasn't like a old house. It was like a newly built house. There was no like I mean, to be fair, we're in the middle of the woods, but it wasn't like a weird area or anything like that. And it ended up happening to me again. I don't know how much longer, like how much time had passed in between it happening. It had to have been a while to where like I had forgotten about it. But then it happened to me again one night, and I was so fucking freaked out. I was like, "Yo, what the fuck?" It immediately like made me remember that, and I was like, "Okay, what the fuck?" And like yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what the fuck it was. I'm pretty sure my house is not haunted. Like, there's no way. It's a new house. Like, but yeah, I don't know, man. It was weird. I don't know how to explain it.
all right, that's always interesting, especially from people like, yeah, I'm a skeptical person. It's like I'm definitely more in this analytical scientific, just like you, but I've heard some crazy stuff from people that I respect. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I can't really disregard certain things, or
Yeah, I have a few friends that are like kind of into like paranormal hunting or whatever you want to call it, and I think a lot of those TV shows did kind of ruin that whole aspect of it. Like, it's kind of a joke now.
Yeah, for sure.
But like they've all had like really weird experiences that they can't explain, that like that they couldn't capture on tape or something like that, because there wasn't a lot of technology back when I was in high school and everybody was like into this stuff, and it was before like all these TV shows really, except for like one. um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much credence to really give to that stuff. I mean, I don't not believe in it, but I also don't fully believe in it. And you know, my thing that happened to me, I don't have enough evidence to like know what the fuck it was. It was just like a weird thing that happened to me that I can't figure out what it was. Um, but I don't know. I mean, again, my cousins, they always fucked around with that stuff when they were younger, like Ouija boards and like light as a feather, stiff as a board, like all that shit. And I remember them telling me that one night they were fucking around with a Ouija board, and they went outside on the back porch and they were looking down at the street in front of the house, and they saw like this row of shadows of like all these people standing outside holding hands, but there was no people down there. And like I think they said like right before that some weird shit had happened downstairs with like stuff getting knocked over, and their friend like uh acting really weird and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, some weird shit. Yeah, and I've heard like bands too. Like, there's a band called the Mars Volts. They mess with shit like that. That fucked up one of their records. But all right, in terms of you were mentioning McGarris postmortem,
Yeah,
and dude, I recently watched a 35 millimeter showing of Sleepwalkers. Have you ever heard of that film at all?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, that
Sleepwalkers is a yeah,
that's fucked up, dude.
yeah. Yeah, there's some weird stuff in that movie, but I don't think a lot of it, judging from like what I've heard Mick Garris talk about it, I don't think a lot of that was like his choice. It's just kind of like what ended up happening in the movie, and uh, I don't know. It's not a bad movie. It's a
No,
little
no.
weird for sure. It's got some cool effects in it too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up just because that was a crazy experience. I was thinking it was gonna be not that well made, but it was actually pretty well made, and it was just the
Yeah,
story was ridiculous. I was like,
yeah, dude, he's a really good filmmaker, and um, this is a very, very controversial opinion I'm about to lay down here, but the Stanley Kubrick version of The Shining, I think, is shit in terms of story. Is it very well directed and very well acted? Absolutely. But is it The Shining? No, it is not. I think that the TV movie version is vastly superior. Just like everything, it's probably one of my favorite Stephen King books too, and besides Pet Cemetery, uh, and it's so faithful to the book, and just like even watching, the guy's kind of descent into madness. Whereas I feel like with Jack Nicholson, you already think he's fucking crazy, so it just doesn't work. That by the end of it, when he's even more crazy, it's like, well, yeah, this guy was already unhinged. You get a different feeling of that in the TV movie version, and it's really well directed. Yeah, some of the acting isn't the greatest, you know, but I think it's a better version in terms of like story, and even some parts aesthetically are like a lot better. You get more of a sense of um, being closed off from everything else in the hotel. And I mean, you get a little of that in the Kubrick version as well, but I think it's a little bit more apparent in the TV version. But that's my controversial opinion on that.
all right, nice. All right, yeah, let's. You mentioned I guess a faithful adaptation. I mean, is that something you're? Because I know the new It movie was not, I guess apparently faithful adaptation at all. I mean, is that something you're kind of strict by, or is it just sort of like a film by film basis or whatnot?
No, I am kind of one of those people that's a stickler for stuff being faithful to the source material. That's why I absolutely fucking loathe the Walking Dead TV show. I don't even watch it anymore because it's so far off. Um, yeah, I don't. I actually kind of disagree because I've read it, and it's a little different, but it's not so different that it's not the same movie. I thought it was pretty damn close. Like, yeah, they cut out like the weird group sex scene, with Beverly and all that, which is fine. That makes sense. Like, that's a weird fucking way to write that ending. And they did change around a couple of the characters in terms of like their role and everything. But other than that, the story was pretty fucking dead on. Like everything that happens to those kids in that movie was exactly how it happened in the book. I do think Pennywise was a little more menacing in the book than he came across in the movie, oddly enough. But he was still really fucking scary and really creepy. So I think that kind of factored into that a little bit. Um, Another one I think is pretty damn dead on is Pet Cemetery. That movie is almost verbatim like the book, except for like the ending sequence with Gage. Um, he's a lot more foul mouthed in the book, and obviously you can't really like that kid could barely speak anyways as it was in the movie. So having him sitting there going around be like, I'm gonna kill you, motherfucker, like it doesn't work. It's not going to work. But everything in that book is pretty much in the movie. There's like a little bit of differences here and there, but I think that's a really good adaptation. Does it kill a movie for me? Not entirely, but it does make me like it a lot less. Uh, I don't know if anything's been like so terrible that, I'll hate it because it's different from the book. I love Total Recall the movie, but is it anything like the story it's based off of? No. In fact, the remake that they did with Colin Farrell is actually a lot closer to the story than the original is. Still not quite there, but it's pretty damn close. So I think it's a movie by movie, book by book basis. Depends on how much I love the source material.
Yeah.
I think that factors into it. If I'm like kind of indifferent and it's like an okay book, but the movie's a little bit better, or if the book is just bad, which I mean, I don't know if I really would read a bad book, to be fair. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's not necessarily horror, but another one that's like pretty much dead on is The Road. It is so accurate to the book, down to like the dialogue, or I should say lack thereof of dialogue that's even in the book, because it's one word answers or one sentence kind of like things here and there, and it's so spot on. Like the ending, everything is dead on for that movie. Fight Club. That one's a little messy for me. Like I love the book so much, and the movie has the main story beats that matter, but there's a little bit of things that changed that are just kind of like, this is dumb. But it's not a bad adaptation. It's pretty close. It's better than the other Palahniuk books that have been adapted to movies. Those have been train wrecks.
Choke and stuff like that.
Yeah, Choke was pretty terrible. And I heard they were going to do Snuff, and that never happened, probably because it was so bad. Invisible Monsters, I know they were going to try and do that. A lot of his stuff they were going to try and do, but I just don't think it ever came to being. I did not watch it, but from what I hear, The Man in the High Castle is way different from the book. And I kind of get it, because even reading that book, I don't really know how it would make for like a captivating kind of show, because it's not really a captivating book, if I'm being honest. It's a good book. It's got some good subtext about like alternate, I know this is like a tangent, but whatever. I'll wrap up my point here soon. It's a good book about like governments and war and, all that kind of stuff. But it's not really an interesting read, to be honest. So I think, from what I understand, the show takes a lot of liberties with that and plays more to like the Nazi symbolism and Russian symbolism of them like kind of ruling the world. But yeah, I hear it's way different from the book. What else? That's about all I can think of.
Yeah, that's not good, dude. All right. Yeah, and you mentioned comic books. The Walking Dead was.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I've watched like maybe like 2 or 3 episodes of like the TV series, but I did get into the comic books, and I actually went, I think, all the way to the Negan. No, it was actually a bit past the Negan storyline. So I remember him. This is gonna be a spoiler, but him like bashing the fucking, what's that Asian character's name? Just bashing that dude's head in.
Glenn?
Yeah, dude. I remember reading that while like the whatever season or whatever storyline they're at. And I was like, holy shit! And yeah, I don't know. Was one of the reasons just because it's not as dark as the comic book, or was just a complete different storyline of the TV series?
Well, part of it is it's veered off so much from the storyline. They're just borrowing bits and pieces of storylines. In fact, when I found out that they were putting Negan in the TV show, I was fucking livid, because it's not going to be Negan. It's a watered down PG version of Negan, because in the comic book, he's foul mouthed. He is fucked up. He's just, however bad the governor was, I stopped watching about like with the TV show when he came around, But the governor was pretty bad in the comic books. Like
Oh
he's
yeah.
very sadistic. But Negan was so much worse. But the way he went about it, he was like he was always laughing. You know, like he was in fucking insane. I'm saying was he's still alive in the comic book, but yeah, you know, Negan's always like fuck this, you fucking fucks. Like he's just fuck every other word, and like you know he's raped and murdered and you know done a lot of fucked up stuff. And what they're getting in the TV show is a bastardized version of that, and it's just it's shitting all over the source material. I feel like because the character is so much, even though he's a piece of shit in the comic book, he's so much more captivating because of that.
Yeah.
So, you know what's weird too, man, is like this Halloween I saw like a little like fucking 6-year-old kid dressed up as Negan, and I was like, are you
What?
fucking kidding me? Like this kid has no idea like how bad this character is, and he's just walking around with this little fake, you know, 5 o'clock shadow beard and his, you know, baseball bat, leather jacket, and I was like, yeah, he's getting like that's how watered down that character is. The fact that a 6-year-old can dress up as him for Halloween, like it's not the same.
Imagine some kid dressed as like Doug from Mute. Like what the fuck? That's like how vile Negan. I mean, again, not yeah. But in terms of comic books, like other thing, I don't know if you heard of it. Garth Ennis, he did. I wasn't really into his Preacher, but I was into the Crossed. That kind of that series. I mean, is Garth Ennis someone?
Yeah,
Or,
no, I love Preacher, and I do not like the TV show at all.
okay, I haven't seen the show, but
I watched the first season, and it took them so long. Like the whole first season is them leading up to the first issue of the comic book series. It's like all this unnecessary backstory of these characters that don't like it doesn't matter. You get that in the comic book if you just did it as a comic book. You didn't need a whole season to explain what these characters were and how they were all going to meet up at this one point in time that eventually got to the first issue of the comic book. I really, really love the guy that they have cast to play Cassidy. James something, I forget his name, but he's a great actor. He was hilarious in the show Misfits. I'm okay with the dude that they have to play Jesse. I don't think he's quite what I envisioned in my head. He looks a little bit like kind of scrawnier and I don't know, like baby faced more than I really expected. And you know, like Tulip making her black. Like, I don't know. Like, this is a weird thing too, man. Like, people get so pissed off when you're like, well, what do you have against changing a character's race? And nothing. Like, I don't really care that she's black now, but at least make it make sense in terms of like where the comic was going. And
yeah,
if you know Tulip's backstory and like her weird racist redneck parents and everything, it doesn't make sense that she's black. It's kind of weird, but and then, you know, to be fair, like I haven't watched the TV series, so maybe they explain it in a different way that makes sense, and that's cool. I have no problem with it. You know, the same thing with like when they made Johnny Torch black. Like, who fucking cares? Like, it doesn't take away from like his powers or, you know, what he can do as a superhero. And they still made sense that, you know, he was adopted or whatever, and that's fine. That doesn't bother me. But it's just when they seemingly do it for like PC purposes, which is what I feel like a lot of that stuff is nowadays. I know it's like a anti-SJW kind of controversial opinion, but yeah, I don't know, man. If it serves the story and it makes sense, that's fine. It doesn't. I don't really fucking care if they're whatever fucking race. Like, I don't give a shit about that kind of stuff. It's just weird when it's forced on you, and you know, that happens. It happens all the time. Like, but what was our original point? I think I got off on
go Garth Ennis,
yeah, they've changed so much in the Preacher TV show that like I don't fucking like it. It's not the same as the comic book. I don't know. There's something really gritty and violent about that comic book that's not translating over to the TV show whatsoever. It's missing something, and I just I don't know. I don't like it. Yeah, but I do like Garth Ennis, man. I you know, his Punisher, when they cast John Bernthal as the Punisher, he looks exactly like Steve Dillon's rendition of the Punisher. It was fucking awesome. I was like, holy shit, like they fucking got it. So they're kind of doing like Ennis's like Punisher Max storyline and stuff. So I'm into that. I mean, it's a little different, but for the most part, it's pretty spot on.
Nice. Yeah, man. I just got to give a shout to Garth Ennis, man. That was like, he's one of my people I respect in terms of literature and everything. Just
Yeah.
completely dark, dude. That dude's one of some of the darkest writings and stuff. But
Yeah. Have you ever read The Boys?
the what?
The Boys?
Oh, dude, I have the whole collection. Like, I was able
Okay.
to, on eBay, I was able to purchase the whole comic book collection of it. Yeah, so yes, I did read them all. I love I love its take on like comic book or on superheroes. Yeah.
Oh man, it's so twisted. Yeah, that's something that I wish they would make into a TV show, but do it on like HBO and like really make it like that fucked up and that violent. Man, that show would be the greatest.
Yeah, and
Cast Simon Pegg as Wee Huey.
nice. Yeah, dude. I mean, dude, when I first read that first, the first what do you call it? The uh,
Graphic novel.
no. What do you call each comic book? Just the I guess first part of this.
Oh, issue.
Yeah, first issue, dude. And you see
Yeah.
what happens to his girlfriend. Just see how
Oh,
like
man.
the super. It's like, oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing with when it comes to, like, superhero movies. It's like, man, dude, all the innocent people that would probably just be killed and just like not, wouldn't be cared about because it's like for a greater, quote unquote, greater cause. It's like, damn, man. Anyways, I mean,
Yeah.
there's other storylines that go into The Boys, but that's what got me like hooked like right away, that first issue and just how that played out. And yeah, Simon Pegg, obviously.
Yeah, that'd be perfect, man. I mean, I know the character was like based off him, like in terms of looks, anyways, but I want to see it in real life so bad.
Yeah, the guy that did the other guys, him with the Will Ferrell, that the director, I forgot his name. He was supposed to do an adaptation, but that never came into fruition. But
Huh.
yeah, yeah, man. Last question here, since we kind of went over. But have you been to any type of film festivals at all? Like at least when you were in California or anything like that, or?
Yeah, that one that I was telling you about, Silver Scream is what they called it. It was a horror movie film festival, and they had like I said, they had like Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp there, and they showed a couple of like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and what else did they show? I forget what all they showed, but it was a lot of stuff. Because Santa Rosa's had a lot of movies filmed there. I know Hitchcock shot some movies in there. They shot Scream. Wes Craven shot Scream there. What else? I don't know, but they showed a lot of different movies, and it was cool to just kind of experience, stuff I had seen at home, but seeing it on a big screen and seeing it with like a big group of people, and getting to experience that was really neat, and just seeing like all the horror like vendors and people like that. It was really cool, but I I didn't get to experience the whole thing, but when I was touring with Carnifex, we played Rock and Shock one year. I want to say this was 2010, maybe 2009, I forget. So we did Rock and Shock, and obviously like I got to see all the bands that played, but I was trying to get over to like the actual like horror convention part of it, and the closest like I got was Corey Haim came to hang out with one of the other bands we were on tour with, Obituary, and got to like see Corey Haim.
Yeah, right.
So the tragic thing is, during that tour, he died like probably like a week or two after that, and we were all just like, "Whoa! Like, didn't we just see this guy? Like, what the fuck happened?"
Yeah.
That's kind of an off-air story right there, but yeah, it was kind of fucked up and sad.
Yeah. All right.
Those are the only two I've really been to.
All right. Yeah. The upcoming directors that you're like Mickey Keaton. I don't know if you heard of him, but any upcoming directors that you're kind of, or I guess the guy that did Get Out. Shit.
Jordan Peele.
Yeah, Jordan Peele. Wow. Yeah. Any upcoming directors that you're kind of looking forward to their future work at all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think Jordan did a great job with Get Out. I fucking love that movie. So I'm really curious to see what he does next. I think it's going to be under a lot more scrutiny than Get Out was, because people are going to be expecting it to be something as groundbreaking as Get Out was. And who knows if it will be? It might be, but it also might not be. And that's kind of the interesting side of it that I want to see what's going to be next from him. Uh, and Mickey Keating, I know who he is, but I'm not super familiar with like his work, to be honest. I've never really seen any of his movies. I haven't even listened to that episode of the Movie Crypt yet, just because I've been so busy with him on it. Gosh, this kind of sucks. Is like I am not really on the pulse with like new directors or writer directors.
Yeah. All right. What about Jeremy Saulnier, the guy that did Green Room? Was that something?
Yeah, he's good. I don't know if he necessarily makes horror movies to me.
Yeah, it's more thriller. Yeah, you're right. You're right. More
Yeah,
thriller.
but I mean, his first movie, Murder Party, I would consider that a bit of a horror movie. That's a good movie.
Oh,
I
I
like
love
it.
that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Green Room that movie left me fucked up. When I got out of that movie, I was just so uneasy feeling and like disheveled. I was like, oh, that was an intense movie. Um, and as somebody who's like toured as well, like thinking about getting stuck in a situation like that, it was probably a lot more scary to me, because we not necessarily played shows where like white supremacists are, but we played some sketchy ass spots, and you never know what could happen and who you're gonna meet or what situation you get fucking sucked into. And yeah, that was a pretty scary movie.
Some backwoods venue, man. I'm like, oh no.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah. But
it's the real life of it, man.
Ty West, Panos
I do like.
Cosmatos.
Oh yeah. Black Beyond the Black Rainbow. That movie's brilliant. Um, I do like Ty West. I think some of his movies are a little bit too slow burn for me. But I did like In the Valley of Violence. That was really fucking good. Even though it's not a horror movie per se, it's just like a straight up Western. Great movie. Good actors. I really think Innkeepers was probably my favorite movie of his that he's done. Um, I do like Ty West, though, yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot. Oh, man, there's a lot more questions I could have asked, but I have. Yeah, man,
I mean,
this is pretty good, dude. This is good.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any lasting thoughts? Yeah. Again, the heavy metal history podcast. I need.
Yeah, I guess.
I need to listen to your end of the year thing, because I was listening a bit of it, and you mentioned Caustic Man, which someone referred to me, or referred that band to me. And I'm like, oh shit. Or
It's
Primitive.
probably the heaviest fucking record I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's the album's called Caustic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
By Primitive Man. Yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could explain the podcast. So, I actually had a podcast before this one years ago with a friend of mine who is in a band. It wasn't really music related. It was called Everything We Like Is Awesome. Pretty much we would just get on dudes I knew in bands, and we would just talk about whatever, like MMA, video games. It was kind of a meandering. There wasn't really, a structure to it. When I moved away, we didn't really continue on with the podcast, and it kind of just got lost into obscurity. I've tried to find these episodes so I can like take pieces of them and re-edit them into like heavy metal history podcasts, but I cannot find them anywhere. So that's kind of how I started with podcasting stuff. And about a year ago, I really, really wanted to get back into doing a podcast. I don't know what it was going to be. Like, I was really trying to figure it out. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts that were doing this thing where they were like starting with the invention of something, or like the beginning of a TV show, and then going episode by episode, breaking down that TV show or whatever. And I was like, man, that's a really cool idea. What can I do that with? And I was just, I was thinking to myself one day, and I was like, man, I really like heavy metal. Like, what if like I just started with Black Sabbath and kind of went through the history of the genre, like highlighting bands and kind of showing like where they started. I was like, that's cool, but I want to really get in depth with it. So I was like, yo, you know what I could do? start with Black Sabbath, just cover all of Black Sabbath, and then stop at like 1980, where they put out like one of their last Ozzy related Black Sabbath albums, and then start from there, go month by month. Start at January of 1980, talk about all the records that came out in January of 1980, and then every episode will be like a history episode going on from there. And I still knew dudes and bands, so like I kind of wanted to still keep that part of it in the podcast because I enjoy talking to other musicians and like their perspectives on like music in general. And so I was like, cool, I can just bring on these guests and we can figure out where their history of metal started, like what got them into heavy metal, and kind of go from there. And over the year, it's evolved a whole lot. Like, now we get on guys talking about, whatever their new records are and how they recorded it. We really get into like the intricacies of how stuff is made, or what bands are working on, or what records got them into metal. And we still do our history episodes in between those interview episodes, just because that's what I want from the podcast. Like I know sometimes we get a little heavy on our interview episodes, but it's because those are so fun to do that I feel like we neglect the history stuff a little bit. But we just finished up 1987 because that was the year that I was born, and I figured since I'm turning 30, like, we'll just go through all of 1987, and we covered all of 1987. I do think we missed some records, unfortunately, and maybe one day we can do like an addendum episode to kind of get caught up on those. But yeah, man, we're gonna be doing 1998 this year. That's the year Matt picked. Our what do you call it? Research has gotten a lot more in depth. Like I'm really going super deep. I feel like I was cutting a lot of corners with how the records are getting made and just kind of like saying some stupid facts I found on like Wikipedia here or there. And that's fine. Like it was a good start.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure I'm doing a lot of this stuff justice. So now like I'm either reaching out to the people in bands being like, hey, what information can you give me on this record? Or, hey, can you spare a few minutes to like talk to us about this record so we can like put it in our podcast, and try to do that to really get into like how these records are made, how these genres kind of like sprouted out of other genres and subgenres and all this shit. And that's kind of where the podcast is at right now. I think right now I have so many episodes pre-recorded that we're up to 50 episodes, but we're actually I just posted episode 43 today. So but we have up to episode 50 ready to go, which is nice because, last year I was dealing with a lot of personal shit, and I'm really surprised the podcast survived because we were not consistent at all. Like there would be months where we would not put out an episode because of shit going on, and it was really bumming me out because I felt like we were onto something and I was really trying to get it to gain traction.
Yeah.
And I think after this past year, it's blown up a lot more than the previous year. So I'm really excited to see where it's going to go this year. So if you're into heavy metal and you want to know about the history of it, or you just want to hear me talk with some musicians, go check it out on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. Download it on your app. It's called Heavy Metal History, the podcast. That's it. We have a website, heavymetalhistorypodcast.com. Check it out. You can leave comments. I do music reviews too now. It's just kind of something I've been passionate about. I know, the world doesn't need another opinion or somebody giving their review on, a seemingly objective thing such as music, but what the hell? I have time on my hands and I love music and I love writing, so I figure why not?
Yeah, for sure, dude. I was like, you made some. I remember you part of that end of the year you mentioned, or you're talking about Bell Witch, and you made some good points. So, any case, thank you so much, Dustin. I'm glad to have you on my own podcast. Hopefully,
yeah, dude, I'm stoked to see what we can do with this fucking thing, and I'm looking forward to bringing something different maybe you didn't have before to the podcast. So, Netflix and kill.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it happen.
And I definitely want to bring get more indie directors, and as long as we've watched their filmography. So